Gospel of Mark 5 minutes at a time. We are going to read chapter 2, verses 23 through chapter 3, verse 6. And as we read through this, the word I'd like you to hold in mind is power. Power. What do these two pericopes? You know what a pericope is? Pericope is a little short reading in the Bible. We call it a pericope. It's a section. Sort of two sections here, two pericopes. What do they tell us about power and how it's exercised? Let's take a look. One Sabbath, Jesus was going through the grain fields, and as they made their way, his disciples began to pluck heads of grain. The Pharisees said to Jesus, "Look, why are they doing what is not lawful on the Sabbath?" And Jesus said to them, "Have you never read what David did when he and his companions were hungry and in need of food? They entered the house of God, and when Abiathar was the high priest, and ate the bread of presence, which is not lawful for any but the priests to eat, and he gave some to his companions." Then Jesus said to them, "The Sabbath was made for humankind, and not humankind for the Sabbath. So the Son of Man is Lord even of the Sabbath." Again, Jesus entered the synagogue, and a man was there who had a withered hand. They watched him to see whether he would cure him on the Sabbath, so that they might accuse him. And Jesus said to the man who had a withered hand, "Come forward." Then he said to them, "Is it lawful to do good or to do harm on the Sabbath, to save life or to kill?" But they were silent. Jesus looked around at them with anger. He was grieved at their hardness of heart, and he said to the man, "Stretch out your hand." He stretched it out, and his hand was restored. And the Pharisees went out and immediately conspired with the Herodians against Jesus, how to destroy him. Well, we have two really interesting stories. And they're about rules. They're about laws. One is the law of Sabbath. It says in the Old Testament, I think in Exodus chapter 3, that if you break the Sabbath, you are to die. You are to be killed. It's a pretty strong rule. And the idea was that we need a day where we celebrate God, where we enter into relationship with God. We honor the Sabbath. Jesus honored the Sabbath. It is a good and noble thing. It's good for our health. It's good for our spiritual health. To set aside a day where we appreciate beauty, where we worship God, where we study, where we engage loving our neighbor, loving God, where we rest and are rejuvenated. These are good things. I commend the Sabbath to you, and yet, right, the Sabbath was made for us so we could be more human, right? Not us to serve the laws and the rules of the Sabbath. Now, here's the thing I want to say about power. People who have power make the laws to sustain their power all the time. So there are good laws. The Ten Commandments are good and noble and reasonable laws that we all should consider. And then there are many, many laws that allow the lawmakers to decide who is in and who is out, who is good and who is bad, who goes to jail and who doesn't. We see laws made like that all the time in this country. The sentencing laws around cocaine over and against crack cocaine are absolutely about who's in power and who has power to make laws. And Jesus says laws should be made to love our neighbor and to love God, not to enforce power. We see it again in the synagogue. Is Jesus going to break the Sabbath? Is he going to heal on the Sabbath? Now, they set Jesus up because most likely they would have never let somebody who was deformed and as a result out of favor with God into the synagogue. But they let him in. So Jesus knew that they were testing him because otherwise he wouldn't have been there, this man with the withered hand. And so Jesus is not pleased with that. Right? What hypocrites, these Pharisees. It's about their power, and they're going to leverage their power by forcing Jesus to break the law, because they knew he would heal this man, because, as we talked about in one of our earlier words, he had compassion. And so they had power. They made the law so they can convict Jesus, so they could retain his power. Because Jesus had a different law. Jesus had a different rule and a different authority. And it came from his relationship with God. It had to do with love. Love is the rule. And so that's the filter through which all laws go. Is this a law that is about power, or is it a law or a rule that allows us to care, to love, to be compassionate to our neighbors? And so my question for you today is, what's power look like in your life? How do you engage it? Where are the rules that bind you or that you seek to enforce, and what do they mean? Or, on the other hand, how do you give it away to expose the world to the love of Jesus? That's what he's doing right here. David ate the bread of presence because he knew God loved him. Jesus loved the man with the withered hand, and so he healed him. How do you exercise power toward love? Give it some thought. I look forward to seeing you tomorrow. Peace upon your souls.